Any other questions
You said the thing with the names was taken care of, right?
Right. I'm just going to mention it again. On Sarah, on the general personnel for 5.1, if we could just make sure that the non-discrimination coordinator person is updated and the complaint manager is updated. And also in section 2.20, it's the broadcasting and recording of board minutes. We need to strike out completely. Individuals wishing to record meetings must notify the board president or superintendent in advance. So that you need to strike that out completely. Thank you. Those are the only things I saw inside the. Anyone else have any other questions, comments? At the next board meeting, we'll go to approve the update policies. Board business, any new business? Board comments?
I guess my concern is just that last meeting that we had that you discussed about how there would be 8 teachers being let go. And that then the following day we find out that there were 17 being told that they're being released. So it's just confusing to me on like why we would meet the day before and be told one thing and then the next day something completely different would happen.
So let me go through each one of the reasons. Well, that's something later on. So basically what you're speaking to, you're referring to is on the board agenda for this evening, we have under action items approval of resolution for non-renewal and dismissal of first through third year probationary teachers. And we've actually checked with our law firm to make sure that what we're doing is legal. The first thing I could share with you is that in the first through 3 years, we do not have to provide a reason for the dismissal of an employee. The second is the board has not made a decision on which one of the scenarios they're going to move forward on. In scenario 4, you have literally an A and a B, as well as scenario 5. Each one of those may trigger a difference in who will be dismissed and then who will be placed within the schedule. The second thing is we had a program that was providing special ed services at another school. That school has eliminated its program, which has triggered us to bring back 2 kids, which we're going to have to provide for in some way, shape, or form. I don't know exactly what services we're going to have to provide, but we're going to have to provide for them because they are special ed, and it does have in their IEP that there are specific requirements. And so we're going to have to look at people who can meet the expectations of those students. I know that one of the 2 is an autistic child. And I also know that special ed teachers that have experiences in autism are really becoming something of a commodity, a high commodity. So we're going to have to basically take a look at whether or not we can provide for the services of that specific student. In addition, we are going to have to post for an ELL teacher in Polish. Our current teachers that are dedicated to ELL do not provide Polish speaking. We are required, once we hit 20, to provide a Polish speaker. So we're going to have to repost that position. So it's triggered certain things to take place. In addition,
I thought our
currently,
gym teacher, sorry,
Yeah,
I mean to interrupt. I thought our gym teacher, that was part of the reason why we hired the gym teacher, because he was the ELL for Polish.
well, we have to, based on conversations I've had with our attorney, we have to post that position. We have to post that position. He may not necessarily be able to provide those services. We may have another person that can provide those services. So we have to post that position. In addition, he's just taken the assessment, and the assessment doesn't come to the district, or he doesn't get the results of that assessment until March 1st. But basically continuing on, we're going to have to decide whether or not we provide services for Ukrainian-speaking students. I'm not sure if we reach the threshold of 20, If we do, we're going to have to post that position as well, and we're going to have to find a Ukrainian-speaking teacher, which I can only imagine is going to be very, very difficult, to say the least. In addition, the state has on the coffers right now legislation where they may change unfunded mandates. More specifically, the time in the middle school allotted toward physical education. Currently, we have to provide 5 days of physical education, just like we do with social studies, just like we do with ELA, just like we do with math. If the state moves forward and they eliminate that unfunded mandate, it's going to provide us with flexibility on how we look at our schedule and how we look at other areas. In addition, we have a few teachers that have submitted for a job share. We have to be respectful that those teachers have had the job share for more than 3 years, at least more than my tenure. However, at the same time, we have to look at whether or not we're still going to be able to provide that. Lastly, so there's a lot of substantiated reasons why we're going in this direction, although we don't have to provide any. So I remind you. And then lastly, we have one social worker who's tenured, who is going to have the option at a full-time position, and right now they're at 0.6. So there's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration, and we have to provide ourselves latitude to assess all these on a case-by-case basis. That's why the number is larger than expected. And so I wanted to be very clear. The sheet of paper says one thing, but I have to schedule based on our programs. And I think that's different for this board because we've always scheduled based on our current certifications, which is not a bad thing, but we have to take a look at scheduling with respect to the certifications we feel are best for our kids so that 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they're able to be successful in the high school. And so that's the approach
will we
we've taken.
possibly need to still RIF teachers that don't fall into any of those categories then after this?
But there could be a potential for depending on what you choose, there could be a potential for a RIF in March. But a RIF is different from a dismissal. So I want to be very clear. This is a dismissal. This is not a RIF.
Right.
So this is years 1 through 3.
What's the difference?
The difference is if you're in a dismissal, you don't have a right of recall to a position. Versus a RIF is typically a tenured teacher, and they have a right of recall. And that recall, based on the number that are RIF'd, could last from 1 year, it could last 2 years. So for example, and I'm just going to walk through the board and through the audience so they understand, if you were to, and this is a hypothetical, I hate to do this in the public, but I'm going to do it. If you were to look at a scenario where you would potentially eliminate art, we have tenured teachers in art. They are tenured. They are well beyond the 4 years. They're proficient or they're excellent. You would have to RIF that employee. If you did not have art for next year, so you went 1 year without art, and then you decide you're going to bring art back, that teacher that you RIF'd would have a right to that position if you brought it back in. They have a 1 year right to that. It's called a right of recall. If your numbers are in excess of 5 RIFs, they have a 2 year right to that position. And so that is a difference. What we have on here provides us with the flexibility to meet all these expectations that we need to meet over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years when it comes to people who speak a specific language or students with a special ed need that we weren't necessarily anticipating that we now need to anticipate, or legislation that is changing. And if it changes the direction of what we can provide. And I can assure you, whatever we do, we're going to sit down with the association and we're going to go over what those changes may or may not be. And that's what we've done since the beginning.
I guess my concern is the fact that we met the night before, and I guess I would have liked to have had it explained to us the night before, and then the next day it happened. I don't understand. I mean,
it's a catch-22. It's a catch-22.
I mean, I don't think we needed names. I mean, by any means, but to kind of have an understanding of what's going on, I kind of feel that the perception that it's giving, is not a very good one.
Well, let's put it in context. It's a catch-22, because I know that people may believe that again for information it doesn't get out there. It gets out there. It gets out there, and people find out, and it's ugly. I'm not saying that it's going to be any uglier than the current circumstances, because when you're dismissing people, It's not good. We don't want to be in that position. However, I felt it was more important that the principal, right, the person who's going to have the conversation with the employee, I felt that the principal and the employee should be the first ones to know. And so we kept that information very tight because the principal needed to be able to sit down with that employee and have a courageous conversation. And it's not easy. It's not. I didn't sit down with the principal. The board members didn't. The association did not. The principal did. And so, what comes first? Do I provide the information to the board that could potentially get out there and get around to the individual? Or do I meet with that individual and have a conversation? Because I can only imagine if I had names on the list tonight and people were wondering whether or not their name was on the list. As opposed to, we were respectful, we let them know in advance, we let them know that their name was on here. We know it's not pretty. We know it's not pretty, but any dismissal, any riff is never going to be pretty. And so I respect your opinion, and I get what you're saying. And it's, if the board wants me in the future to riff people first and then let them know, we can go down that path as well. But I would not recommend that. I think people have the right to know first in person with their principal. And by the way, that does not mean that these people are individuals that are on this list may not be asked back, because there may be people that we ask back based on our circumstances. But right now, I need a vote. I need to know the direction so that we can start to move toward looking at who we have and with respect to the schedule that the board chooses to put in place.
How common is this practice in other school districts? Where, I mean, it makes sense, but how common is this practice done? I mean, it gives us more flexibility, right? But how common is that?
In successful schools, this is a very common practice because they're making determinations based on their fiscal position. And so if you're constantly bringing this to the board on a regular basis and reassessing your programs, you're going to be able to make the right fiscal decisions. And you're going to be able to adjust your current staffing to meet set expectations. And so you'll find that the more successful districts regularly take a look at their staff and regularly assess whether or not their current staff and their current staff certifications meet the direction of the board.
So anyone that applies for a teaching position at our school will know going in that they're going to be let go at the end of the year.
That could potentially be the situation, because what I'm hearing from this board is that we really want to look at our middle school. We want to make sure that our kids are ready in math and ready in science. I hear that from the high school. When the high school sat down with me, one of the first things they said when we asked them, what do you want to work on first? They said math. It's got to be math. And so I can assure you that when we're putting the schedule, when we're posting the positions, we're going to look for people, and I'm going to be specific here, who have not only a special ed background, but have math. Because math is where we are, whether we like it or not, we are weak with respect to what I'm hearing from the high school. And at the end of the day, the ACT, the SAT affects the student greatly. And I can't control that, but that's the reality we live in. That assessment plays a huge factor in the outcome of the student's success. Financially, with respect to the student, and financially with respect to the parent. And so, you could be assured that this will be a practice that we're going to look at on an annual basis, because the board needs to constantly look at what we can do better. And it's never pretty. It's never pretty. But I'm of the mind I'd rather be forthcoming and let people know in advance. And if people are going to be upset with me, I understand. But I respected, I'm going back around here, I respected the employee first. I told them first.
Which I get with you telling the employee first, but I don't know why you couldn't explain to us that there was really going to be 17, or that there was going to be something done differently versus what you were telling us the night before. But that's fine.
I understand.
And I guess I would question what teachers, why would teachers want to apply here knowing that they're going to be let go every year? I mean, that would be, I guess if it's a common practice, and maybe I just am not aware of it in education, but